Good afternoon, everyone. Let us begin with the session. As the webinar series speaks about outcome-based education, today I will be speaking on course design. So, most of us are working for autonomous institutions, as well. The faculty who are working with affiliated colleges, they might convert into autonomous institutions in the near future. So the faculty who are working with such autonomous institutions, so they always uh, have to go with the core curriculum. So today I will be speaking about how to design a course for outcome-based education. And I will differentiate between the course design with the traditional approach, as well as the course design based on the outcome-based education. So coming up with the agenda, today, I will be speaking basically, just touching on what is outcome-based education. Then I'll be speaking about the course design and the basic disadvantages with the traditional design. And then I will be speaking much about a methodology or a technique called as backward design. And then I will be speaking about what is exactly an outcome and how to write an outcome. So this is what all, I plan to cover for today's session. Moving on, before beginning with, as a teacher, always
Hello.
we should have a self questionnaire which speaks about, first of all, what do I already know before actually you go for a class, before actually you start engaging the students, before actually you go for a course. You always need to do this, that, what do I already know? What do I not know? And what would I like to know? So these are the three basic questions a teacher has to ask himself or herself, which makes them or which gives them a clarification, a clarity before actually reaching out to the student. In the same way, a teacher before going for a class or a teacher before beginning with a course, they should also understand the learners as well. So understanding the learners again starts with the basic three questions, which says, what do they know, what do they feel, and what do they learn? So this first question always helps us in reaching the learner, in catching up the particular learner level. And the next question comes is, how can I engage my students in a way that is meaningful for them, where the students do not feel bored, where the students do not feel that, we are speaking something which is an overhead transmission. Uh, this engagement is very much required. And then coming to the third question, which speaks about what are the most effective strategies to promote learning. So how do we engage them? What are the techniques we have to use? What are the strategies we have to use within the classroom or outside the classroom so that we can actually engage the students? So these are the three basic questions which gives us a clarity on understanding what exactly a learner is. So moving on, so these days, wherever we work or wherever we look at, every campus says, every educational institution says, we are following outcome-based education. So exactly what is this outcome-based education is all about? If you could look at the screen, this complete diagram will give you a complete snapshot of outcome-based education. So when we speak about OBE, immediately the campuses or the curriculums will speak about a vision, mission, PEO, PLO, as well as CLO. And additionally, they also speak about the session learning outcomes as well. And coming to a college or a campus will have a lot of departments, and every department will offer a lot of programs, and every program will have a lot of courses. So whatever I spoke about, the vision to the course learning outcome, they actually fit into that particular program as well as they fit into a particular course as well. Then when we speak about what exactly we do as a part of OBE, we actually write or we actually design learning outcomes, and we actually plan the learning activities according to those outcomes. We actually plan the assessments in line with those particular outcomes. This is what we do as a teacher. And all this actually falls into the teaching and learning process, that is, we speak about a course syllabus, the outcomes in line with the course syllabus, the pedagogies, how exactly, we follow the learning process, how do the students learn, assessment, how do exactly the students write. So this overall speaks about the outcome-based education. So you can see in the below, what is outcome-based education? It is nothing but an educational theory that bases each part of an education system around outcomes. So we can understand that here, outcomes plays a vital role. What is exactly an outcome here? So we write outcome for a program, which we call it as a program outcome or a program learning outcome. Outcomes for a course, which we call it as a course outcome or the course learning outcome. So by the end of the course or by the end of the program, each student should have achieved the outcomes that were planned at the beginning of the course or at the beginning of the program. So this is what about the outcome-based education is about. The program works around the particular outcomes planned. The course works around the particular outcomes that are planned. And at the end, we need to see that the outcomes are achieved. So how do we see that outcomes are achieved? So we have an attainment process, we have an metrics by using which we see that whether the student has attained the particular outcomes. So I'm going to speak about that in the upcoming webinars. How do we evaluate whether the student or whether the course, whether the program is achieved or not? So moving on, as mentioned, I speak much about the course design here. So in turn, I'm speaking about curriculum design here. When I speak about curriculum design, I always look at teachers as designers. So when we speak about teachers as designers, we always come across what exactly the designing is. I say as a part of our teaching profession, we always go with designing the curriculum or the designing a course. We always come across designing an instructional design, as well as we always come across designing the assessment process. So these are the major three focused areas where the teacher is going to make his menu ready. As said, crafting the curriculum. So this is not that easy. As mentioned in the beginning, all these days the campuses used to follow a very basic traditional approach, which I'm going to speak up in the next coming slides. Then coming to the instructional design, when a faculty is assigned with a particular course, before he actually reaches to the students, they prepare a session plan, they prepare a lesson plan, they prepare a course plan, what exactly they have to do on a particular day, how they have to teach the overall course as well. Every faculty will design an assessment process, which speaks about how do I see that the students learned what exactly I taught. How do we see that the student has actually learned the particular outcomes? So these are the three major focus areas, as mentioned, when I speak about teachers as designers. So when we speak about designers, we know designers in engineering profession, in architecture profession, etc. When we look at them, they always, their major focus is on their clients. Similarly here, teacher as a designer, our major focus should be on students. But when we speak about our traditional curriculum, when we speak about our traditional teaching process, which is passive, which is teacher centric, we actually do not much pay concentration on the needs of the students. But the effectiveness of a curriculum, the assessment and the instructional designs is determined by the achievement of the learning goals. So here the learning goals actually we get from the students, which actually we designed based on the needs of the students. So that is where when we speak about designing a curriculum, when we speak about designing an instruction pedagogy, when we speak about designing an assessment for the student learning, we always need to be very much careful on the student needs. So moving on, here, this is from a literature which speaks about the two sins of traditional design. As mentioned, when people speak about outcome-based education. People always speak about activity-based learning. People speak about practice-based learning. So moving on activity-based learning and moving on practice-based learning, people think that we are an outcome-based education system. Following Bloom's taxonomy, people believe that they are following outcome-based education. But here, what is exactly happening? People already have designed their curriculum in a traditional approach, and then people add upon some course outcomes, and they change their instructional model by just adding some activities. This finally has leading to a situation where it goes on a hands-on curriculum, but without being minds-on students. Students fail to apply their mind, but they do some activities. A simple example is, I say the most of the engineering laboratories goes up with a model known as cookbook method. What is this cookbook method? We have a manual with us. The manual says how an experiment has to be done, which is a step-by-step guide, and we always give it to the student, and student looks at that particular manual and keeps on doing his experiment. While performing the experiment, student never thinks of why this, where this has to be applied, and etc. is missing, which says hands-on without being minds-on. This is one of the basic sin in our traditional curriculum design or the traditional instructional design. Coming to the second sin, which speaks about aimless target coverage. What exactly this aimless target coverage means? As a faculty, we all know when a course is given, we have an academic calendar, and we always worry about covering the syllabus. As a faculty, we always march with our lecture notes. We always march with our session plans. We always march with the syllabus to be covered. But now coming to a student always marches through a given textbook, which we call it as a course textbook, and he goes through page by page. And what is finally happening? It is an attempt to traverse all the factual material within the prescribed time. Here, time plays a critical role. The given target, student tries to complete the textbook, faculty tries to complete the syllabus, but at the end, looking at the target coverage, the student and the teacher will stay just at the understanding level. They actually fail to move on to the upper level, that is apply level. So these are the basic sins of the traditional curriculum or instructional design. Here again, I'm not speaking about assessment design, which I'm going to take up in the coming sessions. So moving on. So what exactly we do in the standard course planning, which is called as a traditional course planning. Say, consider you are a faculty working with an autonomous institute, and you are asked by your board of studies to design a course, to plan a course. So then what exactly we do? So we always begin with choosing a textbook for the particular course which we are thinking of. Say, for example, you are thinking of to design a course, say computer architecture. Then immediately you will be start searching a textbook from where this particular course has to be planned. Then immediately after finding a textbook or set of textbooks, we will be beginning writing the syllabus. And while writing the syllabus, as a faculty, we always concentrate on the depth of the syllabus. Moving on, then once the syllabus is designed, then we will write the lectures. There is a lecture plan, that is what we do. Then moving on, we will prepare the PowerPoint presentations or the lecture notes, and then we deliver it to the students. And finally, we prepare exams, problem sets, and submissions. So this is what exactly the standard course planning which we do. And in the overall process, we never look at what exactly the student is looking for. We never look at the needs of the student. We never look at, in depth to what exactly the industry looks for. And we call this approach as an instructor-centered approach. And this is what the most of the campuses are following actually. Then moving on. So today I'm going to concentrate on a new design approach, which we call it as the backwards design. And this is the approach we are required to follow when we say that we are offering an outcome-based education curriculum. And this backwards design framework will help us in designing a pure and perfect outcome-based curriculum. So how do we start here when we speak about a backward design? Say here again, you are asked to design a course curriculum or a course syllabus. Then we always begin with formulating the learning goals. As I mentioned, if I am asked to design a course or develop a course, computer architecture, before choosing the textbook, I am first required to formulate the learning goals. What my student is supposed to learn by the end of my course. So we are required to write 4 to 5 learning outcomes for the particular course. So once the learning outcomes are ready for my particular course, then we begin with setting the learning objectives. So there is a difference between a goal to an objective to an outcome. I will be speaking about them in the next series of the slides. So first is formulating the goals. Next is setting the learning objectives. Then we design assessments here. So when I'm speaking about assessments here in bracket in the slide, you can see formative and summative. I hope most of you have an idea of formative and summative. Whatever the assessment and examinations which we conduct, they actually fall into 2 categories. One is summative, which we speak about. Whatever the examinations or the tests which we conduct at the end of the course, we call them as summative. And whatever the examinations which we conduct during the course, we call them as formative. For example, your mid-1 exam, mid-2 exam, your in-class quizzes, etc., they all fall into formative assessments. And the final examination, the semester end examination, falls under summative exam. So the basic difference between both of them is, if we speak about formative assessments, we have conducted a formative assessment and the students have given the exam. As a faculty, we can review their examinations based upon their performance. We can reform our lesson plan. We can instruct the students on improving their learning. But coming to the summative exams, we have no such provision available, because students give that examination at the end of the course. If he fails, he's again required to give a remedial. But as a faculty, we can't do anything over there. We can't help them there. So outcome-based education majorly focuses much on the formative assessments. So as a faculty, we should have a clear differentiation between both of them, having much focus and improvement of formative assessments. And when a student performs well in the formative assessments, and clearing summative assessments is just a norm, nothing to worry about there. So once we design our assessments, then we are required to develop our learning activities. That is nothing but our lecture plan, our lecture activities, what kind of assignments we can give, what kind of homework we can give, what exactly we need to teach within the class. So, yeah. Someone, Brahmi, is talking. Hello? I'll take the question in the last 10 minutes. Please, please note down them, or you can put down in the chat box as well. So this approach, we call it as an backward design. And this backward design is a student-centered approach. Now just, on the slide, you can see the standard course planning and the backward design both. And you can differentiate both of them. In the standard planning, textbook plays a vital role, but in the backward design, the learning outcomes or the learning objectives or the learning goals plays a vital role. And when you look at the standard course planning, we actually deliver lectures, we prepare lecture plans, finally we prepare examinations. But here, the examinations model is defined, is designed before actually we develop activities. Because the examinations and the learning activities should be synchronized. That is what exactly the failure we see in our traditional approach. I, as a computer science faculty, I come across some courses like .NET Technology, which is a programming course. At the end, examination goes as a theory. Database management system, which is again a software course, examinations goes again as a theory. So where the assessment has to be designed, where we are going to evaluate the set or the designed or the developed learning outcomes of the objectives. So this is where the backward design, which helps us in designing a pure outcome based curriculum in contrast to our traditional course planning. So moving in detail, what do we do here in the backwards design? The first question comes is, what should student know or be able to do by the end of your course? Say computer architecture here. So now here, as a faculty, to write the learning goals, to write the learning outcomes or the objectives, I will be thinking about what exactly the student has to do. So that is where we call this as a student-centered approach. And the next question is, how will you know if they get there? So these are my outcomes, these are my objectives. But how do I know that by the end of the course, after conducting my assessments, my student have learned this? So my assessment design should be in line to my course outcomes. Then the question comes is, what will you do to get them there? If the student have to give the assessments, and if the students have to achieve those learning outcomes, what is exactly you have to do in the class? So that is where actually we speak about the learning activities. That is where actually we speak about activity learning, which has to come in the process of the backward design. So this is what all the backward design we are required to follow when we design a curriculum. So moving on. So how do we do? Here, this slide has a diagram which speaks about we design backward, but we deliver forward. What does this delivering forward means? In outcome-based education, we have a session learning outcome, we have a course learning outcome, we have a program learning outcome, as well as we have a vision of our institution, as well as mission of our institution. So delivering forward in the sense, once we start practicing this approach and start focusing on the outcomes from the lesson, say to the unit or to the course, to the program, to the vision, to the mission, finally our campus becomes an outcome-based education institution. So moving on, what outcomes becomes the criteria? Here, basically the materials that are selected, the content that is outlined, the instructional procedures that are developed, and the tests and examinations that are prepared. So all these are going to stand or lie in line with the outcomes that are designed. So outcomes always speaks about the kind of changes to be brought in the student, and the instructional activities that which we planned and developed, they ensure that the outcomes are attained. So if we fail, if we go with a wrong design of the instructional activities, then again, the students fail to attain the outcomes also. So moving on. So this is what exactly we need to learn. We need to know before moving on, that is active learning. People speak about all these days, traditionally we are following passive learning. So passive learning in the sense, the classroom looks monotonous, where faculty goes on speaking and the students just listen. And always as a faculty, when we find a silent classroom, faculty just watching the faculty, if student watching the faculty, we say that, my class has gone great. But what exactly an active learning speaks about? Active learning says engage the students in the learning. So when your class goes on, the students, instead of just listening to what exactly you are speaking, they are required to be engaged in some learning activities. There are various kinds of active learning activities which we can do within the classroom, which I will be speaking in the upcoming webinars. So these active learning techniques or the strategies should be made as a part of the session plan, should be made as a part of the lesson plan, where the audibility of the classroom improves, the learning of the student improves. So when I speak about active learning, so here what do we do? What exactly as a teacher we deliver in the classroom, we need to convert that theory into an activity. Then the question comes, how do we ensure that that particular activity is the best activity? An activity which can replace the complete theory which we are supposed to deliver, then that particular activity is the best suited activity for the particular class. Because I have seen as an example, many of the faculty members who started practicing active learning, they failed. They come back and say, students are not happy with the active learning. Here, it's not about the case of the students, it's about the difficulty of faculty converting his theory into an activity. So here the faculty should be very choosy in selecting an activity in his lesson plan. Then the another model of learning which we speak about is the collaborative learning. It speaks about make the students as a small groups, maybe students sitting in a common bench, maybe students sitting in a common row. Give an activity to them and make them work on, summarize, and actually they will again speak back. So all this we call it as an activity learning, which is again an essential part of outcome-based education. So as again, this slide speaks about what exactly I spoke before. So good activities will always develop a deep understanding of the important ideas to be learned. And activity should always capture the complete theory that which we are supposed to deliver. And activity helps us in engaging the student throughout the session. Because we know when we speak about audibility, the students fail to pay the concentration on us when we speak 50 minutes continuously. So the session plan has to go in such a way, it should be instructor centric to the student centric. Talk for 5 to 10 minutes, give an activity, do them activity for 5 to 10 minutes. Again, take hold of the class, speak for another 10 minutes, give an activity. This way the class has to go for the 50 minutes. This way, we can promote, active learning. So then moving on, some people when speak about a course or the session plan, some people speaks about goals, some speaks about objectives, and some speaks about outcomes. We should have a clarification on all of this. And I came across, when I go to some campus, people say that, I'm asked to write an outcome, but I'm not clear how to write an outcome. I'm asked to write an objective, but I do not know how to write an objective. And faculty says that they have a big confusion between an objective and outcome. So a clarification is required over here. Moving on, 1 minute, Mr. Vijay.
Yes, sir, last 5 to 6 minutes.
I could see only last 6 minutes. Shall I take over question and answer, or
yes,
shall I
sir,
continue?
Yes, you can take over question and answers. No issues.
Okay then. So thank you all. I will speak about goals, objectives, and outcomes, and how to write an effective outcome in the upcoming session. There is a limitation over here with the software, which allows us only for a session of 40 minutes, and I'm just having 6 minutes more. I'll be taking question and answers now. So anyone having any question can put in the chat box, or I'll be answering them. Sir, any questions, or you can speak out, I'll answer them. Any questions as of now? If anyone raised a hand, you can unmute them as well.
Yes, sir. Some question in the chat, sir.
Yeah, someone is speaking about how many course outcomes should be defined? So this is from Miss Gayatri. There is no standard rule, ma'am, but by looking at the kind of courses which we design for a curriculum of, say, 40 hours or 60 hours, typically the course outcome should be between 4 to 5, not beyond that. 4 to 5 is an ideal. Yeah, the next question I could receive is how to check the effectiveness of the courses that were prepared by this backward method. We call it as a course attainment method. I'll be speaking about that in my upcoming webinars. So there is a standard model. We call it as a course attainment process. So we are going to evaluate each and every outcome. And finally, we see that how many of the students have attained that particular outcomes. Someone is speaking about for lab. So for lab, we have a method known as inquiry-based labs. And outcome-based education speaks about always develop inquiry-based labs, but the labs that which we are practicing as of now, we call them as a cookbook labs. So someone can search on internet and you can find how to design the laboratories, which are outcome-based, and laboratories courses also are required to have an outcomes.
More questions in the chats.
Someone is speaking about course outcomes should be prepared based on syllabus. Please, sir, as already I mentioned, that is a traditional approach. Designing outcomes with the syllabus is traditional, and backward design says first write an outcome. First write an outcome, then plan an assessment, then design a syllabus. So someone mentioned, is there any standard method? If Mr. Dr. V.V. Kamesh, sir, the standard method I say for an outcome-based curriculum is the backward design. And someone said NBA is also expecting to be around 6 course outcomes. Yes, they have given a provision to write max 6 outcomes, but it is not a standard rule that 6 outcomes should be required. You can have a 4 to 5 as well. Someone said, mentioned how to justify formative and summative. As mentioned, any examination conducted during the course, say you are mid 1, mid 2, in-class assessment, you have a class of 50 minutes. At the end, last 5 minutes, you have conducted a quiz. All those are formative assessments. And any examination which is a part of end exam, that is semester end examination, final examination is a summative exam. And while calculating attainments, while seeing whether the outcomes have been achieved or not, we will take into consideration both formative and summative assessments. And can we expect sessions in future on COP? Yes, I'll be taking on 4 more webinars. We'll be announcing in a day again. And I'm going to speak about in detail on, first of all, on course outcomes and designing a course on backward approach, then how to map COs to POs, then how to attain the COs and POs. Everything I will be speaking about Professor Ramakant Komati. Someone said, is the outcome should be framed in view of the industry? No, not at all. We are always going to design an outcome based on the needs of the student. And when the student need speaks about an industry, definitely they come in line. But here, we are going to speak about framing an outcome based on the needs of the student, but not based on the needs of the industry. Someone said this creates a stress in the students. Sir, to say this model will definitely help improve the learning of the students, and students really love to participate in the classroom when we start doing some activities in the class.